The first sentence of the hidden message made my hands shake so badly that the yellowed paper slipped from my fingers and landed beside a photograph of me I had never known existed. It read, "If you are reading this, I may have already failed to save you." In that instant, the quiet apartment I had shared with my roommate for almost 4 years no longer felt familiar. Every ordinary memory, the untouched coffee cups, the locked desk drawer, the long walks she took alone, suddenly seemed connected to a secret that had been growing around me while I remained completely blind. Before I tell you what the rest of that message revealed, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel if you believe kindness can reach people in their darkest moments, forgiveness can heal what fear has broken, and second chances can change a life forever. My name is Everett Cole, and at 32, I had become very good at pretending I needed no one. I lived in a sunlit 2-bedroom apartment above a family-owned bakery in Portland, Maine, where the smell of warm bread drifted through the floorboards every morning. My roommate, Laurel, had moved in after answering a painfully practical advertisement I had posted online. I wanted someone quiet, responsible, and willing to split the rent without creating complications. Laurel arrived carrying 2 suitcases, a small box of books, and a potted rosemary plant she treated as if it were a family heirloom. She was 29, worked as an assistant curator at a local history museum, and possessed the strange ability to make a room feel calmer without saying much. She never pushed me to talk, never complained when I ate standing over the sink, and never asked why I sometimes froze when an ambulance passed outside. In return, I respected her privacy, paid every bill on time, and convinced myself that this arrangement was friendship enough. The truth was that my life had narrowed after my younger sister, Maisie, died in a car accident 6 years earlier. I had been driving. The accident report blamed heavy rain, poor visibility, and a truck that crossed the center line, but guilt does not care what official reports say. Maisie had asked me to slow down 10 minutes before the crash, and I had laughed, telling her I knew the road. She died before the paramedics reached us. I survived with a scar across my shoulder and a belief that my survival had been some terrible administrative mistake. Our parents tried to hold the family together, but I withdrew from them until every call felt like an accusation, even when their words contained nothing but concern. Eventually, I stopped answering altogether. I left my job as a high school music teacher, took remote bookkeeping work, and built a life where no one depended on me. Depending on people meant loving them, and loving them meant having something else to lose. Laurel understood more than I realized. She never demanded an explanation when she found me sitting on the kitchen floor one bright spring afternoon, unable to breathe after hearing a teenage girl laughing on the sidewalk below. She simply opened the windows, placed a glass of water beside me, and sat across the room until the panic passed. She did not tell me to calm down or insist that everything would be fine. She stayed. That was Laurel's greatest gift. She stayed without making her presence feel like a debt. Still, I kept a careful distance. When she invited me to museum events, I claimed I had work. When she suggested we visit the Saturday market, I said crowds exhausted me. When she left a small birthday cake on the table, I thanked her, ate one slice, and spent the rest of the afternoon locked in my room because kindness frightened me more than loneliness. Everything changed on a clear Tuesday morning in late September. Laurel had left early for the museum, and I was searching for an envelope after the bakery owner asked me to mail a document for him. The drawer beneath our hallway table had jammed, so I pulled harder than usual. The thin wooden backing cracked loose, revealing a narrow space between the drawer and the wall. Inside was a blue cloth folder wrapped in twine. My name was written across the front in Laurel's careful handwriting. I should have put it back. I knew that. Instead, a photograph slid from the folder and landed face up on the floor. It showed me sitting alone on a bench near the harbor, my head bowed, while Laurel stood several yards away, watching me with an expression of fear. The date printed on the back was almost 3 years old. The message began with the warning that made me drop it. When I picked it up again, I read the next line standing in a beam of morning sunlight. Laurel explained that she had met Maisie before the accident. Not casually, but through a grief support volunteer program at the hospital where Maisie had completed part of her nursing training. Laurel had been 19 when her father died after a long illness, and Maisie had been one of the student volunteers assigned to sit with families during difficult appointments. According to Laurel, Maisie had stayed with her through an entire afternoon when Laurel's mother was too overwhelmed to speak. She bought Laurel a sandwich, listened to stories about her father, and made her promise not to abandon her own future because grief had changed its shape. Laurel wrote that she never forgot Maisie's warmth, even though they met only a handful of times. Years later, Laurel saw my name in a local article about the accident. She recognized our family name and later found a photograph confirming that I was Maisie's brother. She did not seek me out immediately. She followed my public music page for months and watched it go silent. When she eventually saw my roommate advertisement, she believed it was coincidence at first. Then she convinced herself it might be an opportunity to repay Maisie by helping the person she had left behind. Laurel admitted that moving into my apartment without telling me the truth had been wrong. She had planned to stay only a few months, make sure I was safe, and then explain everything. But the more withdrawn I became, the more afraid she was that the truth would make me feel observed, manipulated, or pitted. So she kept delaying the confession. The message grew more disturbing as I continued. Laurel had documented moments when she believed I might harm myself. The photograph by the harbor had been taken on a day she followed me after finding an envelope on my desk addressed to my parents. I remembered that afternoon. I had written an apology letter and walked to the water intending never to return. I had stood near the edge for nearly an hour, but a little boy nearby dropped his red mitten, and when I picked it up for him, his mother thanked me with such simple sincerity that something inside me hesitated. I went home without knowing Laurel had watched from a distance, ready to call for help. Her message described other days when she had quietly removed prescription bottles, checked whether I was breathing after long silences, and contacted a counselor anonymously to ask how to support someone who refused help. Anger rose inside me so quickly that it burned away the sadness. Laurel had invaded my life. She had followed me, photographed me, opened doors I believed were private, and turned our home into a secret rescue mission. Every meal we shared now felt staged. Every gentle question seemed like an investigation. I shoved the papers back into the folder, but another envelope fell out. It was addressed to Laurel in my mother's handwriting that I opened it with trembling fingers. My mother thanked Laurel for sending occasional updates about me. She wrote that she and my father had respected my request for distance, though it was breaking them, and that knowing I was eating, working, and not entirely alone helped them survive each day. She asked Laurel not to pressure me, only to remind me through ordinary kindness that I was still loved. The final paragraph contained a sentence I could barely finish. We do not blame Everett for Maisie's death. We are only afraid grief will take our second child too. By the time Laurel returned shortly after noon, I had spread every photograph, note, and letter across the dining table. Sunlight filled the room, making the scene feel brutally exposed. Laurel stopped in the doorway. Her face lost its color when she saw the broken drawer. She did not deny anything. She placed her bag down, remained several feet away, and said she was sorry. That apology made me angrier. I accused her of building our entire friendship on a lie. I demanded to know whether any moment between us had been real, or whether I had always been nothing more than a promise she had made to a dead woman. Laurel listened without interrupting, tears gathering in her eyes. When she finally answered, she said it had begun as a promise, but it had not remained one. Somewhere between burnt pancakes, unpaid parking tickets, museum stories, and quiet afternoons by the windows, I had become her closest friend. She admitted that fear had turned her good intentions into dishonesty, and that she had written the message because she knew the truth could no longer remain hidden. That I wanted to forgive her immediately because part of me understood. Instead, I asked her to leave. Laurel packed one suitcase while daylight stretched across the floor. She did not argue or remind me of everything she had done. Before walking out, she placed her apartment key beside the rosemary plant and said she hoped that someday I would believe her care had become real, even if her courage had come too late. The door closed, and for the first time in 4 years, the apartment became exactly what I had once wanted: quiet, uncomplicated, and completely unbearable. For the next several days, I moved through the bright rooms like a stranger. I told myself Laurel's absence was a relief, yet I kept setting out 2 coffee mugs. I resented the rosemary plant for leaning toward the window as if expecting her return. I read the hidden message again and again, searching for proof that she had manipulated me, but each reading revealed something different. Her words contained guilt, fear, and tenderness rather than pride. She had never presented herself as my savior. In fact, she repeatedly admitted that she could not save me and should not have believed she could. The last page, which I had not read during my anger, explained why the folder had been hidden in the hallway table. Laurel had placed it there that morning because she intended to give it to me after work. She had received an offer to manage a museum archive in Boston and planned to move within 2 months. She knew she could not leave without telling me everything. At the bottom of the final page, she had copied a sentence Maisie once said to her during that difficult hospital afternoon: "Grief is love searching for somewhere to go, so give it somewhere kind." I sat at the table until the afternoon sun shifted across the room. For 6 years, I had given my grief nowhere kind to go. I had used it to punish myself, my parents, and anyone who came close enough to care. Laurel's secrecy had hurt me, but my silence had hurt people too. I had demanded honesty from her while hiding the most dangerous parts of myself from everyone. The next morning, I called my mother. When she answered, neither of us spoke for several seconds. I heard my father asking from another room who it was, and then my mother began crying. I expected anger, but there was only relief. I told them I had found the letters. I apologized for disappearing from their lives. My mother said they had never needed an apology for the accident, they had only needed their son. Those words broke something open inside me. I cried in the full light of morning, not quietly or gracefully, but with the force of 6 lost years. My parents cried too. For once, none of us tried to protect the others from grief. We let it exist between us without treating it as blame. Later that day, I contacted a therapist whose number Laurel had once left on a community bulletin board. I had secretly memorized it while pretending not to notice. Making the appointment did not heal me, but it was the first decision I had made in years that pointed toward a future rather than away from one. I also visited the school where I had once taught music. The principal remembered me and invited me to volunteer with the after-school ensemble until I felt ready to consider something permanent. When I entered the practice room, sunlight reflected from brass instruments and polished wooden chairs. A student played the wrong note on a trumpet and laughed. Instead of freezing, I laughed too. Finding Laurel took longer. She had gone to stay with a colleague while preparing for her move, and she did not answer my first message. I could not blame her. 2 weeks after she left, the museum hosted an outdoor historical exhibition in the public gardens. I knew she would be there. The day was cool and bright, with white clouds crossing the blue sky. Laurel stood beside a display of old maritime maps, explaining something to an elderly couple. When she saw me waiting near the path, her expression became guarded. I did not ask her to forget my anger. I told her that what she had done was wrong, even though it had come from love. I explained that being watched without my knowledge had made me feel stripped of my dignity. Laurel accepted that without defending herself. Then I told her I was sorry for treating every act of care as something dangerous. I thanked her for staying when I had made staying difficult. Most importantly, I told her that she had not saved me. She had done something more honest and more human. She had kept a light on long enough for me to decide whether I wanted to return. Laurel began crying, and I did too. We stood in the middle of the busy daytime garden, surrounded by visitors, children, and the rustle of autumn leaves. There was no dramatic embrace that erased everything. Forgiveness did not arrive as a single clean moment. It came as an agreement to rebuild trust slowly. Laurel moved to Boston for the museum position, but we remained part of each other's lives. We spoke every Sunday afternoon. I visited once a month, and she returned to Portland whenever her schedule allowed. Over time, we learned to become friends without secrets, rescue missions, or silent obligations. A year later, I returned to teaching part-time. My parents came to the first student concert and sat in the front row holding hands. After the final song, my father hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. My mother gave me a small box containing Maisie's nursing school pin. For years, they had kept it hidden because they feared it would hurt me. That day, I fastened it inside my jacket, close to my heart. The grief was still there, but it no longer demanded punishment. It had finally found somewhere kind to go. The hidden message changed my life not because it revealed that someone had been watching over me, but because it forced me to see how many people I had shut outside my pain. Love had been waiting at the door in different forms, a roommate sitting silently across the room, parents answering every call they feared would never come, students saving an empty chair, and the memory of a sister whose kindness had continued traveling through strangers long after her death. I once believed surviving meant I had stolen a future that belonged to Maisie. Eventually, I understood that wasting my own life would not honor hers. Living with compassion, honesty, and courage was the only tribute she would ever have wanted. Before this story ends, please leave a meaningful comment about someone whose kindness helped you through a difficult season, or share what forgiveness means to you when trust has been broken but love remains. Your words may reach another person who feels alone and remind them that healing often begins with one honest step. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Some messages remain hidden because people are afraid of what the truth may change. Mine changed everything. It showed me that I had not been abandoned, that forgiveness did not require forgetting, and that a second chance was not something waiting for me in the distance. It was already there, folded carefully inside an ordinary drawer, waiting for me to open it.